So hello everyone, and right now we are doing the third part of depression series together with dear John McNally. I have the question for him today. How can we tell if we cannot deal with our emotions anymore and we need professional help?
Okay, so basically to get in through my door, it takes a great deal of work to get there, let alone the work you're going to do once you get in. But I know from experience that if you're feeling depressed, your whole body is oriented towards doing nothing. And so it's going to take a lot of work to determine whether you need to have therapy, to then actually pick up a phone and book an appointment, to do the research, who am I going to go see. All of this stuff takes an outpouring of energy. So I know this is very difficult for people to do. If you're thinking about whether to get into therapy or not, you are simply in the process of trying to find the courage within you to go about and do it. The decision actually is a lot easier. If you're asking the question, you already have doubts within your own ability to manage. The next part is to do what you would do with any other problem in your life, is to go seek professional help to get an assessment done to determine whether you need to continue with therapy or whether you can manage on your own. So the way to look at it is a process of setting up your mind so that you can think about getting into therapy, then actually making the phone call, booking the appointment, get an assessment done to determine whether you actually need it. It's difficult from the outside to say I need it or I don't, because you don't know what it is. Unless you've been through therapy before, you're not going to understand what it can offer you. So it's better to go in and get an assessment done so then you can determine at the end of that session whether or not you want to continue.
And I wonder, does depression have any phases of presentation at all?
Depression itself is defined by a cluster of symptoms, and the assessment we do will determine whether you have the symptoms that we can then confirm a diagnosis of depression. It doesn't have a phased-in approach or a phased-out approach. However, that said, different people will present differently. High-functioning people typically have more resources they can bring to bear on depression. So even though the depression may be the same for everyone, some people have more resources, and that allows them to do what I call faking normal for a longer period of time. That is, they're feeling miserable, but they present to the outside world as if things are going okay. And an awful lot of people are doing that right now. They're pretending as if the world's okay, even though inside it's not feeling that way. There's another group of people who simply, because of their life situation, they don't have the capacity to bear it. They will fall apart fairly quickly. And we usually capture them fairly quickly. So the moment anything comes up in their world, they sort of crumble under that weight because they don't have the resources to bring to bear. Finally, there's another group of people we call treatment resistant. That is, even though we provide treatment, the depression seems to stick. And so we haven't got the tools or the mechanism to lift that form of depression. And for them, they go to more deeper intervention. That usually involves, for example, electric shock therapy would be one way, to kind of reset the patterning in the brain so that the depression drops away. Although there's no real phases of depression, depression's the same for everyone. People present differently to me because of their ability to cope with. It varies amongst different people.
In work life, actually, we wouldn't understand if someone is depressed because they are so high-performing, they can deal with stress so good, we don't even recognize if our colleague have depression.
Not only is that true, but it may be that they don't recognize it either. They get caught up in their own sort of adrenaline and everything else that they don't see that they're actually hollow underneath. So there's this hollow feeling because the emotional level, it's all quite dark. But they're not aware of it because they're on that treadmill and they just keep moving along it. So it's very often that your peers, people you hang out with, people you work with, they don't often see it because you can fake normal, you can present normal, but you may actually be feeling quite terrible. And it may be that you can do this for an extended period of time, but you can't get out. And so if this stuff is happening to you, these are the reasons why you need to come into therapy. Because it's only after you get this assessment done that you begin to start to look at this thing differently and try to nudge your way out, to find a pathway out.
And my next question would be, is there any way to fight depression?
There are basically two main ways of fighting depression. One's going to be medication, the other one's going to be talk therapy. But before any of that takes place, the first thing you need to do is you need to go in and see your family doctor. And the reason that needs to be done is because there are some hormonal changes that can occur that can mimic depression. So you will have the depressive symptoms, but you won't actually be depressed. For example, if you are hypothyroid, so the thyroid system produces hormones, if hypo simply means low, so under thyroid, it will present as depression. And so, upwards of 20% of depressed people will have a low thyroid count, and all they really need is to have that corrected through medication, and the depression will disappear. Well, if you come to see me, I would screen you and tell you go see your doctor, rule these things out. There's another disease called Cushing's disease, which increases the amount of cortisol in the body. And if you have that amount of cortisol in the body, you increase the likelihood of having depression. You need to go see your family doctor, explain to them how you're feeling, so that they can then rule out these two very simple hormonal problems that can be dealt with fairly quickly. If those aren't the problem, then you move into doing psychotherapy. And if you remember from one of our last videos, we talked about the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. Only medical doctors can prescribe psychotropic medication, so psychological-based medication. If you're depressed, you're going to want to be put on an antidepressant. And only doctors can do that. So either your family doctor or a psychiatrist are the only ones that can prescribe that. So you're going to need to see one or the other if you want to do medication. A lot of people come to me and they don't actually want to take medication. There seems to be a national aversion to taking pills. People don't want to do it. What I tell them is this: if you're making a decision based on not wanting to do something, then it's actually a weak decision-making process. A better strategy would be to trial it for a period of, say, 3 months, and then at the end of the 3 months make a decision as to whether or not you want to stay on to it or not. Because the problem with deciding ahead of time is you actually have no idea whether that medication is going to help you or not. And if you think that you're in misery and you want out of misery, there's no sense cutting off something that might help you just because you don't like the idea of it. So what I tell people who see me, I tell them, trial it for 3 months. You're in charge. You can always decide not to take it. The reason I go for 3 months is because most antidepressant medication have a very slow build to it, so it takes a few weeks to kick in, and then once it kicks in, it tends to take off. So it takes a slow build. Equally, if you're going to come off medication, go to your doctor and find the proper way of coming down off of the medication. You need a slow taper off, slow taper in, slow taper off if you're going to come off medication. So if you try to just stop all on your own, there are going to be physiological effects. You're going to have a headache. You're going to have all these different things. And the doctor will have to put you back up on the dose you were originally on and then taper you off. In terms of whether the medication works, it tends to work on about 50% of the population. Of course, you're an individual. You have no idea whether it's going to work for you or not, so you need to trial it for that reason. But overall, it works on about 50% of the people. It works best when the medication is taken with the second form of treatment, which is therapy, so talk therapy. When those two are combined, you get the best chance of success. Without taking the pills, you can still find success, but the probability decreases. So you combine the two and they work best. In a previous video, I would have talked to you about basic forms of talk therapy, and there's a wide variety of them out there. There's a lot of different types of therapy out there. Do your homework. Figure out which one might work best for you. Try it on, see how it works. You can always stop going there and try another one on. You don't know until you go out and experiment with it. The second part to this is that the talk therapies are designed to try to put a wedge in between how you feel, so the misery you're feeling, and option to get you out. And it's trying to actually create options for you in terms of moving away from depression. All the different types, so whether it's psychodynamic, behavioral, cognitive behavioral, which is what I do, it doesn't really matter which one you pick. they're all trying to do the same thing. They're trying to move you from a pattern which you're stuck in and find a way to move you away from it. And that's what talk therapy does. The biggest problem people coming to see me is they know they're in pain, they know they're suffering. They say to me, John, I just want to be free of this. Just show me how to do this. On the one hand, being stuck with depression and being free of it. They just want me to wave a magic wand and get them on the other side. There is no way in talk therapy to do that. Talk therapy is a process. It's a dynamic between the therapist and the client, and there's no way to get through it without going through it. There's no shortcuts. So different forms of therapy have different approaches to it, but basically all talk therapy does the same thing. It moves you from a stuck position, and it tries to move you to a position where you're not stuck anymore. The goal of therapy is to be out of it, is to get you to a position where you can manage your life again as an adult. That's the goal. And each therapy has their own pathway through that.
In order to catch all the videos we have been doing on psychological topics together with John McNally, please subscribe and click on the bell below the video so that you are always on top of everything and you have heard our videos already. So thank you very much for joining us today. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.